I went up and basically said I'd like to buy a ticket to Washington, D.C., on your next flight. And they said, fine, it'll cost you $900 or $1,000, something like that, which was expensive, but I was carrying the cash. And they started working on it and got to the ID question, and I said I wouldn't show ID. And so she called someone, I think someone else from United, and then the sort of people started gathering around. There was a guy who was sort of dressed the way their employees dress when they're out on the tarmac, with big signal vests and stuff like that, tool belts and things. And he just kind of hung out behind the counter there, sort of in case I was going to jump the counter and like go down the luggage conveyor or something. And then there were these other guys sort of hang out between me and the doorway to get out of the airport. Not really doing anything, just sort of hanging out there while we waited for TSA folks to come and talk about, how did this actually work. I ended up talking with one of the guys who worked on security for United, who I think he was like deputy chief of security there, who just kind of hung out and kept me company while we were waiting for the real chief of security, who was busy somewhere else. And he told me a bunch of things that, this is all imposed by these security orders that come down from TSA, and that they change them like every other week, that there was no consistency between one airport and another, so every time United shifted people from one airport to a different one, they had to, they'd be enforcing the rules they knew, but they were different rules than what should be enforced in this airport. Oftentimes that these security orders were amended verbally, and there was just no record of what they actually said. So it was, it was a bit of a mess as far as the airline was concerned as to how it should even know what the rules were or enforce them. There was a sign that said, it was one of those old FAA signs that gave a whole long list of, conditions of carriage are this, and, international liability is limited by that, and somewhere in the middle of it, it also said that you had to show ID if requested or something like that. But again, this is just a sign in an airport. It didn't actually point you to any law that required you to do this or any regulation. It was just a sign. When they wouldn't sell me a ticket without me providing ID, I said, can I see these regulations? And the United's head of security went off sort of behind the counters and behind the scenes and spent 20 minutes back there trying to figure out either what the rules were or whether they could show them to me. And eventually came back and said, well, I can't show you the rule, but the good news is you can fly without ID. You just have to subject yourself to an intense search. And, having spent a lot of time around Fourth Amendment lawyers, the first thing they tell you is don't ever agree to a search, right? If they have a right to search you, they'll do it anyway. And if they don't have a right, don't agree, because you'll blow your case. It'll be a consent search, and I didn't consent. So when I didn't consent, then they wouldn't sell me a ticket, and I left the airport.